So let's get started. And I think, especially for you, Andres, as we haven't met before, but we we have the community 4D, stands for Dreamers, Doers, Designers, and Doubters. And we are looking at the big issues, what we call meta crisis today. All these different crises that may somehow are connected. There are many names, polycrisis, other names, but we chose to refer to meta crisis. But what we really cherish in this community is also something we call little bigs. And I have been following your work, Mattias, and I'm calling you the hunter of a hunter of little bigs. I hope it's okay with you, but little bigs for me is what you actually doing and documenting heroes of our times in beautiful documentaries. I find your, how to say, story, also your life story, so interesting. I mean, you went a very known school, in a documentary school, right, in Sweden. You were a photographer in New York, and you chose a path of slowing down, so to say. You believe in this with degrowth, living a life that is maybe, how to say, worth living in terms of. You have to tell your own story, but I'm just trying to frame here because I think what I think would be very interesting for us first to hear a little bit about you as a person, why you started Campfire, but then all the things you have been doing there, right? Or the great meetings you have been doing, and then finally that we have a discussion, because again, you are at the very center of what we cherish the most in this community, the 4D community. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I'll try to keep all that in mind, but you'll have to prompt me as I go, because I'll start, and then if you lose the train of thought, you'll prompt me, hopefully.
Very good.
Get to the end together.
Good. So, anything, Kazi, you have issues with children, but anything that I'm forgetting, I don't think so. So we can get started. And welcome, Ida. So nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Good. Without further ado, Mattias.
Okay. Well, I think my life took a big detour. I think I started out on the right track. As a child, I think I had a lot of the right ideas about the world, but when you're a child, you don't necessarily have the language for it, or you just feel how things are. And I could sense that there were a lot of things that felt wrong to me as a child, but I couldn't put it into language, and I didn't really have any adults around me that backed up this feeling for me. Everybody around me seemed to be saying that things are the way they're supposed to be, but I had a very vivid sense that things were not the way they were supposed to be when I was a child. And so if I now, as an adult, try to put into words some of those feelings, maybe it would sound something like, how come the way I know my neighbors is only superficial, like across the fence, like, hi, how are you doing? How come there's no joint projects? How come we're not growing food together? How come I don't know what food is? I think, this is me as a child now, I think that food is something that you get from the supermarket. I think fish comes from the freezer. So many things that were disconnected for me, and only much later in life did I begin to put all those pieces back in place, and trying now to live a life where I grow a lot of my own food, and I know much more my neighbors, my community, being a part of your surrounding area. And also,
Mattias, can I ask When
Yep.
you're a child, you mean like what age you start?
Like 8, 7, 6, 9, 10, 11, like somewhere in there. You know how you would see like a Disney film perhaps, and there would be forests of like magical real forest with real animals. And then I would look up, and I grew up in a kind of like a suburb with like 70s style houses, every house the same as the other one, but there were some trees and some little wooded areas and stuff. But I would look out and maybe I would see a squirrel, perhaps. But the forest was never deep enough that whenever I would be in the deepest part of the so-called forest there, I could still see like another house. So it didn't line up with the image, like the myth of forest or the myth of nature. And at some point, I stopped having those feelings. At some point, I got with the program and realized, okay, this is life. This is how it's supposed to be. And I better just get through school and do well enough so that I can have a job and all of that stuff. So that's when the big, what I call the detour began, because I think I had a lot of the stuff right there as a child. Luckily, the detour took me through some territory where I picked up a lot of knowledge. I see some messages on the screen. Are they for me? No.
No, don't worry about the messages. If they are messages about questions, we'll raise them later. But now it's your time.
Okay. Okay. So where was I? Yeah, I didn't really enjoy school, but I enjoyed photography. It was a way of being able to walk up to somebody and say, because I was kind of shy and I needed some tools to get over my shyness, and having a camera. My father gave me his camera at one point when he realized that I was into photography, and I set up a little makeshift dark room at my house. And having the camera meant that even though I was shy, I could walk up to almost anybody at high school and say, "Oh, can I take your portrait?" It's an innocent, like the worst that could happen is to say no. So it just gave me a sense of, it boosted me to dare to reach out and talk to people. And I could go up to the cutest girls, like, "Oh, can I take your?" It was innocent, you know. "Can I take your portrait?" And often they were like, yeah, no problem. And then I would go in the darkroom, develop the pictures, and give them a print. So it was around that time that you're supposed to make all the life choices, and I didn't really feel like I wanted to do anything that had to do with school and the career paths that were set up or imagined by the counselors and so forth. And so I applied for photography, like college or gymnasium in Sweden, and now they have the media program. But back then they had a pure photography program. They had one in Malmö, which was near where I grew up, and so I applied, and I was given the 78th reserve. I was on the reserve list, and I was number 78. They only accepted 8 students, so it didn't seem very likely that I would get in. And so I got out my father's typewriter and I wrote a letter to the board of admissions for gymnasium something. I don't know. There was no internet at the time. I don't know how I found I guess I got out the yellow pages and found the board for admissions or something. Typed out a letter where I voiced my complaints about how they accept people based on average grades, what does it have to do with anything if I have poor grades in various subjects? I really love photography, and I sent them some of the images that I had taken, and it was like a thick envelope with a bunch of images, probably pretty crappy, but at the time I was very proud of them. I had taken them, I had developed them, and I sent in this package, and I didn't hear anything. And then 2 weeks before school was supposed to start, I got a letter back saying, "You've been accepted." So I love that because it means that somebody somewhere received that letter, and somebody somewhere was moved enough to bend the rules and put I was 78. So when somebody who was I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, but I'm very grateful for that person who I've never met and will never meet, most likely. And but that was the beginning of the so-called detour, which took me through being a photographer in New York. I was a photo assistant first for 5 years. Now we're moving along with the story, so this doesn't turn into a 3-hour lecture. And I was in fashion photography, which is pretty far from what I'm doing now, but I was young and kind of dumb and not politically connected or worldly connected at the time.
But it was a lot of girls.
It's true, yes. The very first day of my job as a photo assistant, we were photographing. Day one was Naomi Campbell, for those of you in my generation know who she is, and the second day was Raquel Welch, who's a famous actress. And so yeah, I was in this thing which I'm kind of embarrassed about now, but yeah, that's what it was, fashion photography, and not, I mean, climate flight shaming and so on wasn't invented yet, so we were flying to Miami taking pictures and just silliness. But all of that, along the way, I gathered a lot of the tools that I'm using now as far as knowledge about light and photography and composition. And it wasn't filmmaking at the time, but still photography. And being in a situation where you're photographing somebody, filming somebody, and having, like, making them feel comfortable by being, friendly and not taking up a lot of the space in the room, but rather kind of being what's that called? Humilde, whatever that is called. Yeah.
Humble.
Humble. Yeah. So that was the beginning, and then 9/11 happened. I was an eyewitness to 9/11. I saw the second plane, because I saw the first plane on TV, and I was living in Brooklyn with a clear sight to the World Trade Center. So I saw that on TV, and then I went to the roof to wonder, and all the neighbors came up to the roof, and we were standing there. And as we're standing there, the second plane hit, and that started an awakening process that began in that moment when I was asking myself the question: how can somebody hate this community that I'm now a part of so much that they do these acts, kill themselves and the plane and innocent people, and like all of this stuff, to me, was greatly worthy of investigation. Like, how is this possible? And then when I looked to the radio and TV and the mainstream media at the time in New York, they were just giving nonsense answers. It was George Bush at the time who was president, and the answers were all like, they hate us for our freedom. It was all silly. They hate us for our freedom. We're going to smoke them out of their holes. The best thing you can do to help now is go see a show and go to the restaurant, which I get it. Like, nobody was doing anything, so businesses were going under, but there was none of the level of what really is going on here. And that was the beginning for me of being interested in or realizing that I'm part of the world, and how is this world connected, and what does what I do have to do with how the world is connected. So that was a starting point for a very different way of being in the world and asking questions and finding answers. And not that long after that, I moved back to Sweden, and I had become interested already in making films instead of taking photographs. And I realized there was something called Folkhögskola in Sweden, which I didn't know about, and then somebody told me, and it was wonderful. I went to Folkhögskola called Biskopsarna, where they had a dedicated documentary filmmaking program. I went there for 2 years, and was kind of deprogrammed from being a New Yorker during my 2 years. That's quite the contrast between the New York photography, fashion, whatever bullshit lifestyle to a kind of heavily left, environmentally curious group of friends, presenting other types of of answers to other types of questions. And yeah, and then if I fast forward the tape a little bit more, a few years after that, I had met my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and we had a child. And anybody on here who has had kids or has kids knows that there's not much sleeping going on in that first year in particular. And I was trying my best to be a good papa, and so I developed a sense for waking up before my wife whenever there was a sound from the crib, and I would wake up and go take care of her, and that was great. But it also meant that I had very, very little sleep, and the armor that you usually carry around to deal with life was paper thin for me, and at that point in my life, so it was like I would cry if I heard a song, like Den blomstertiden kommer. It was like I heard the words for the first time and started crying because it was so beautiful. That's the level of no ability to resist stuff. And if somebody said something shitty, I would just break down, and just from sleeplessness. And in that state, I read a book called The Ascent of Humanity by Charles Eisenstein. And that book answered all the questions that I had as a child, like how come we're so disconnected from each other. And that was the second catalyst. If 9/11 was the first catalyst, that book was the second catalyst for realizing that there are cracks in this facade of how things seemingly are. And so my question to myself was, can I keep, because at that point I was already a documentary filmmaker. I had made some films for Swedish television and was like on the track of having that as my career. But after reading that book, I wanted to only make films that had to do with moving ourselves as a cultural box in the direction of we are nature. Nature's not something we can go visit in a canoe. Nature is we are nature, basically. We're connected to everything else on this planet, and if you liken this planet to an aquarium, we cannot go to one end of the aquarium and put poison or treat it badly, because it's affecting the whole aquarium, and that's what this world is. And so that's the only thing I wanted to make films about. And then I was frustrated about the documentary filmmaking industry, the system, which is beautiful because there's all this support you can apply and you can get funding and everything, but there's a certain way of doing it, and the stuff that I wanted to do didn't fit in. So that was the 2016, around that time, and that's when I also had this idea that was grabbing me and rising in me like sap in the springtime, about and just the name came to me, Campfire Stories. It just felt like the right thing. Everything just fell into place, and I started making these films, and now there's about 27 of them on the platform and 16 podcast episodes. And so I'm about to celebrate the first 10 years of Campfire Stories.
It's amazing.
I'm gonna have a sip of water. That was my introduction to the whole thing.
And tell me a little bit, the meeting with Charles Eisenstein, you met him several times, right?
I only met him in person one time so far.
One time, okay.
I've met him in similar ways that we are meeting each other now, a few more times.
Yeah.
But so that book really changed everything for me. And the second book I read by him, right after finishing the first one, I read Sacred Economics, which I highly, dearly recommend. And it was the book in my life that it was the most times that you just put down the book on your lap and you go, oh my God. I'll give you one example. So it's all about economy and economic. And he's comparing in the book how a currency has to be connected to something in order to be real. So it used to be connected to gold, or it used to be connected to gold. So I don't know, until early 70s or something, there was a gold reserve which made sure that the value of the dollar was something based in reality. And so in the book he says, so you can go to a gold mine and you can unearth the gold, and then you transport it and you put it back into the ground. Now you put it in something called Fort Knox, but it's basically you taking it out of the ground and then you're moving it and you're putting it back in the ground, and now it has value. And with the same logic, you could just create a currency out of the value. Could be clean air, for example. That could be what anchors a sacred type of, or another type of economy. Anyway, the book is beautiful. There's so many incredible connections in there, and reading that book was the first time that I heard the term gift economy, and it's when I realized that this is the right thing for me, and I'm going to do this in gift economy. These films, I'm making them as a gift to the world, and figure out a way for people to be able to support if they want to, and that's what's happened. And then I found out, because part of reading that first Charles Eisenstein book was that we realized we wanted to move to the countryside. We were living in Stockholm at the time, and so we were able to buy a piece of land and actually build a house, which is incredible. The bank made a series of errors which benefited us, because we would not have been allowed to. We were not trustworthy from the bank's perspective, but there was a really funny banker, and he just kept screwing up in the most beautiful ways, and that meant we got a loan to build a house. And so, having moved here now to Järna, and having just lived here for a few months, I found out, because there's a program right near where I live called YIP. It stands for the Youth Initiative Program. And I found out that Charles Eisenstein was coming to be guest teacher at YIP. So he was coming to, like, within 4 kilometers of where I lived. My hero. So imagine, I don't know if, Bob Dylan is your hero. It's like Bob Dylan is coming, like, just to your little town where you're living. And so I found his website and sent a request if it would be possible to interview him, and miraculously I got a reply, a positive reply. And a few months later, I'm sitting, actually there was no good place at YIP to do the interview, so we came back here. So I'm sitting in my kitchen now with my big hero interviewing him, and that was the big booster of Campfire Stories, to give it legitimacy. And I think in those early days when nobody knew what I was doing, at least I had this solid interview from which to begin. And that interview turned into a film and a podcast. And I made several little episodes that I was sharing on social media. So that was the beginning. So I'm very grateful to Mr. Eisenstein.
I know I haven't read the book, so I'm going to do that now. But I subscribe to his Substack, to his posts, and also I'm aware of the gift economy. I think it's very powerful, the whole idea, right? I mean, I remember I am here in south of Sweden, Mattias. I remember discussing the gift economy with my wife the whole way here, because I was so. If I back a little bit, when working at Ericsson, we had also a community, and somebody said that once that every article that the community wrote, we put the whole community put so much energy, so much thought, that it was like a gift. And so the whole idea of, and then gift economy, I mean, so I was discussing with my wife, and she said, but Herald, what could you help or give a gift to anybody? I mean, I could, and then I start thinking, okay, it could be like giving Portuguese classes. Okay, but then maybe it is, and so. But at the end of the travel, you see how powerful the idea is, because you get more and more ideas, right? Let's say the farmer here, just my neighbor here. So many times it's very difficult for them to take vacations or do anything extra because they have the animals and things to do. You can offer your time, maybe. So many things. If you start thinking more of how you exchange your time and things that you have, like when you are like you have your first kid and you couldn't sleep. You could think maybe people could step up and help also, right? I'm just thinking loudly, but the whole idea of the gig economy, as I understand, but I haven't read the book, how powerful it is. So it has been big choices you made from New York, this that you could earn so much money as a photographer, and so, and you're now. So, and you're happy with all these decisions. I can see that. How do you see Campfire Stories, let's say 5 years from now? Because the thing that I'm wondering a little bit is when I read about your work is that once you work very locally, right?
I try to, yeah.
Yeah. Is it still so? I mean, if we find a hero in India, for instance, would you make a documentary, or do you have this boundary? And the other boundary you have, it's we had a little big in India for 3 weeks ago of an education project that started little, and is amazing what they are doing, Mattias. But it's in the education. It doesn't have anything to do with nature. So you have these boundaries with local and nature still, or how you're thinking there?
Well, nature, the fact that we are nature, it can relate in so many ways. So it's not nature as in only trees and greens. I mean, I make films about artists and poets and people who set up a peace ambassador in their home and all kinds of different things. But traveling to India would probably not be on the top of my list. My ideal film, I can make it within biking distance. I have a bike that I can fit all my gear, and I'm working on a series of portraits within biking distance that might come out in 2028. So that's the ideal. Now I do make exceptions, and I did travel to Canada last or 2 years ago, and northern New York State to make 2 films. So I can be persuaded to travel if something comes up that I am drawn to. And I'm actually going to the United Kingdom this summer to shoot 3 films. I'm going to drive is the plan and shoot 3 films and then come back. So I do break those rules every now and then, but the ideal is to stay near home. If there's an amazing person in India doing incredible stuff, I'm going to trust that there's an amazing filmmaker in India that can make that film. And I have some plans for a online film festival where I invite filmmakers from different parts of the world to screen their films online, and that way I can do the local stuff here and do the local stuff there, and we can reduce travel. Yeah.
I think that well, first of all, thank you very much for sharing a very interesting story of connecting things via unrelated travel. And many times when we talk about the little pigs in the 4D communities, what we try to do is not make huge changes, but small changes that can be repeated and scaled. And you just mentioned 1 or 2 important things. One is localism. We had a 4D conversation about how one ex-Ericsson employee who moved to Philippines, now it's providing energy and connectivity in places where they were not before, and that's changing the villages. So in your case, the inspiring change through stories, that could be done as well in other places. So how can this little pig be replicated? What is needed for this? Is it just passion? Is it just time? What is needed to replicate a model like this so many people can tell their stories?
I think it already is replicated, and I'm part of the replication chain. I don't know all the people out there making stories in this way. I know a few, and they're doing pretty much what I'm doing in their communities. And I think one thing that can be done is, because it's easy to maybe feel small and also be small. I mean, what I'm doing is very small I mean, it depends how you compare. But it's fine to be small. But one thing that can be done is to find each other and connect. So I found, a few years ago, I found a film production company in South Africa that was working in a very similar way to how I was working. And then I found another one in New Zealand that was also doing incredible work around permaculture and tiny homes and stuff like that. And so we all got together for a series of meetings like this. And we decided that we would do a series together. So everybody would do their thing in their part of the world, but we would house it under one umbrella. And so we made a series that we called Something Beautiful for the World. And it consisted of 12 films that we released, one for each month of the year of 2024. And so each production company made 4 films. And so altogether we had 12. And then so we shared resources whenever. So Happen Films was the name of one of the production companies. So whenever they had one of their films come out, the other Campfire Stories and Reflections of Life, we sent all of our traffic to that film, saying, okay, now this film is coming out. And then we did that for each other. So together we got a triple the size audience. I think that's probably not the answer to the question exactly, but that's my interpretation of your question. It's just a matter of finding one another and boosting one another. And even if one does not films, one can still find and boost people who do great work. And there's all different ways of being in gift economy. I've chosen this Patreon model, so people can join in as a monthly donor. And I'm fine. I have people that I'm supporting on a monthly basis. Stuff like micro projects that are people doing incredible, and which is so worth like 30 donor, like $3 a month or $5 a month. It brings me so much joy to have to follow these different little projects. And that way one can be part of a mycelium of change makers, even if what I'm doing is little and what they're doing is little, but it's the forest model. It's the under the forest floor model of myceliating networks and helping each other spread the words, like just posting about somebody's, if you were touched by a poem you read or a film you saw, you might tell somebody or post about it and spread it. And that's
Mattias,
quantum level stuff. Yes.
How big is your audience today?
Well, there's different ways of measuring. I guess the easiest way to measure is to just look at the YouTube channel, which has 120,000 people following.
That's good.
So it's different. And then you look at the newsletter. There's 5,000 people on the newsletter, and you look at the Patreon, like paying supporters. There's about 400. So there's just different in different arenas and different ponds and different trickles. There's different amounts of. So obviously the 120,000 people on YouTube, I'm not personally invested or know by first name a fraction of them. But then it comes. Well, there's circles. So the closest circle is the Patreon community, where I try to post much more personally about what's going on and personal stuff. Like it feels like the family. And so it's
a question on your YouTube users. Have you checked where do they come from?
I have checked. They come from. So I mean, from day one I was aiming for the English-speaking world, and also since I was living for so many years in New York, it seemed natural to me to do stuff, even if a film might have been Swedish. Some of them are in Swedish, but then it's always subtitled and so on. And so that's reflected when you look at the geographical areas, and it's the United States on top, and then followed by, so that I think the US is by far the biggest audience, but then it follows by Canada, United Kingdom, and then Sweden, I think, is in 4th place, and a few European countries are pretty big, like Germany and Holland as well. And after that, it's different. Yeah, it's pretty worldwide. I just saw recently that I think I've done something recently that has struck a chord in India, because the Indian followers are increasing a lot in the last few months. So you never know what happens where, and it's the algorithm and stuff. I cannot I cannot really do too much about the algorithm saying yes or no or maybe, but I can just keep doing what my heart tells me to do.
Can you check more than geographic segmentation? I'm just not,
They
old,
give
young,
kinds of,
educated, non-educated, left, right, that type of, who are the ones that are interested in these things?
I have not seen anywhere to check people's level of education or how they vote or anything like that, or how they lean. But it's slightly more women. Somewhere between 55 and 60% are women, and basically nobody under 30. So it's from 30 and then upwards. I think somewhere around 50, 55 is the kind of peak. There's probably all kinds of, not so good with those numbers. I think you can find out all kinds of stuff if you really get into the analytics. I'm not so good at it, so I need to hire an analyst for that.
Yeah. We have Harm, we have a question. And then Christian.
I just popped up in my mind. Is it only the things that you think of yourself that you're going to do, or that you're inspired with, or do you also work with other people to get together, where you define, okay, now we want to, or do you do interviews or participate in interviews about the subjects that you are interested in?
The subjects for the films and podcasts tend to come organically. So most of them come up in different ways, fall into my lap in different ways. Sometimes somebody will tell me, oh, you should really check out this thing. And generally, whenever somebody says, oh, you should really make a film about such and such, 9 times out of 10, it's not for me. But 1 time out of 10, it really is perfect. And that was the case, for example, with Adam Wilson, the farmer who produces food and gifts everything. He doesn't sell anything. He gives everything away to his neighbors and to stranger, anybody who shows up at the farm. He gives everything away. So that was a story that I heard about through a friend, for example. And there's other times like that when a story comes to me that way. But yeah, it's all kinds of different ways, but generally it's like an organic process of I can't think now of how it happens. I would have to think of a particular film and then trace how I found that, which I can do, but maybe we'll get back to it.
Andres.
Hello, I find this really inspiring. So thank you so much for your story. You were mentioning that previously you worked for a national TV. I'm a little bit curious about, do you find any interest from national television companies to also show your movies? And would that be a nice bonus or not?
I mean, I made a transition from having been working with SVT to doing my own thing. So in the beginning, whenever I had something going on that I thought might interest them, I would send an application their way. And on one occasion, they picked up a story and we produced it together. And it was called, on Swedish TV, they called it Porträtt av den andre. So Portrait of the Other. I don't think it's still on SVT Play, but it was there for a long time. I did the same thing with an English voiceover, and I called it On Compassion. And it was actually based on an essay by Charles Eisenstein, the whole film. So that's one example where there was a hybrid where SVT was involved, which is as you know, the Swedish national television. But then I've sent a few other stories that I thought would be slam dunks, and they've turned them down. And then there was one full-length feature that I made in collaboration with the Swedish Transition Network, which I thought not for myself, for my sake, but for the sake of the Swedish Transition Network. I wanted to send it to TV, SVT, so that I could tell them that I had sent it there, but they turned it down. And so a few times they turned it down, and then in the end, I'm kind of now at the point where I'm grateful that, because then otherwise you have to collaborate with them and do stuff that works for them, and I'm way happier doing things the way I want to do them and not having other chefs in the kitchens messing with my recipe. So I'm finally at the point where it's not obvious that if they called, which is unlikely, but if they called and said, "Oh, could we please do something?" It's not for sure that I would be. I would hear them out, of course, but I'm very pleased the way things are now and the way things are growing and reaching out and having an impact that's beyond just the limited reach of Swedish TV and their slots and stuff. So I'm enjoying this territory, and I'm 10 years in, and I imagine 10 more years, and it's gonna go places that I don't know right now. But I have a very nice feeling about potential collaborations, and not that I want this to be necessarily to become big in a kind of a Netflix type way. I think it's beautiful that it's small, but there's other ways of being big, or maybe big is the wrong word. There's other ways of, I don't know, I have to work on the language there, but I'm excited for the possibilities of where this might go.
Maybe a follow-up question on that, Mattias, because in some ways, I mean, I think somebody calls our economy for attention economy, right? And like it or not, I mean, you are part of that in terms that you want people to watch the documentaries and so. But at the same time, I find it fascinating your position and how you, for instance, when we explained the collaboration with SVT and that maybe it's not even obvious, but a question I have is like when we do if I'm in a beautiful beach and if I'm alone, I feel like I want more people to watch. Don't you get sometimes excited about how to say that it becomes bigger in that sense, that more people enjoy the good work that you're doing? You understand my question? Because it must be difficult at the same time, right? Or maybe not.
Good question, but your question has to do with scale, like compared to something. So you're asking, your question sits in a space where it's comparing to something lesser and something bigger, let's say.
Yeah.
So I try to have this exercise for myself, where I compare it to, it's already bigger. Do you know what I mean? It's just a matter of how I look at it. I think it's absolutely incredible that I have over 100,000 people on the channel, and then I could compare to Reflections of Life, my partners in crime in South Africa, and they have over 1 million. So then I could feel small compared to them, and then I could look at somebody else who's has been doing the thing for years, has 6,000. It's just a matter of how you compare.
Yeah,
and I
got it. Yeah, and I mean, I guess that even Charles Eisenstein has, I don't know how many followers he has, and so yeah.
And I suspect that goes with you. If I had 1 million, I could still feel the same way, that it's small.
Yeah.
If I had 10 million or 100 million, I could still feel the same, maybe not 100 million, but you know what I mean? Like, I think that sense of, oh, I could do more, comes with the territory of being human. And that's why I have one of the very important pillars of, like, foundational pillars for Campfire Stories is one that I don't, there's 3 of them, but one of them is localism. The other one is gift economy. So we spoke about both of those 2. And the third one I don't speak about very often, but it's called, I call it the inefficiency principle.
Yes.
The inefficiency principle.
Yes.
That means I might have a lot going on and I'll still take the day off and do something that doesn't, quote, make sense. Like go have a sauna and go for a swim.
Yes.
And it's a reminder for myself that when I'm on my deathbed, it doesn't matter if I made 40 films or 35. That's not going to matter. And
Yes.
so if I do the 35 and I do them well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful work.
Mattias, reading your work, you have one more principle that you talk also, the degrowth, right? Which is related also. So the belief that the whole society should think more in terms of degrowth. So
I think degrowth and an inefficiency principle are cousins or even closer.
Yes. Okay.
To me. So I like the word because we're living in a society that's so efficiency junkied out. like we just want to be more and more efficient. And I think back to the time when we got tractors instead of oxen and horses, and suddenly we were 100 times, 1,000 times more powerful, and we're still like being stressful. And so building in an inefficiency principle or a degrowth principle, I think makes a lot of sense.
This is beautiful, Mattias. I we had earlier today in our community a discussion about generations, right? Do you think it's anything with, particularly in your generation? Because I'm a baby boomer, right? And I don't know, baby boomers have been like very traditional in many ways, work, very loyal to a company, work hard, and efficiency and all this. Are you, how to say, a member of your generation? Or I don't think so either, right? Because your choices are very Mattias. It's not, or?
Yeah, I don't. I guess my generation is called Gen X.
Okay.
Not so. I'm not exactly sure what the different generations are supposed to be doing, but I think I feel in my heart what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm trying my best. And I'm very privileged, by the way, to be in a position where I can do what I want to, and have the basically just have a refrigerator. There's a room downstairs. It's called the kitchen. Inside, there's a refrigerator. Next to it, there's a freezer. It's amazing. It's full of food. In case I run out, I can go to a place where there's all kinds of food, and I just show a plastic card, and I can refill it. It's incredible. So I'm very blessed. Some of you might enjoy the same privilege. It's amazing.
You have a question, Herman? It is a privilege, Mattias. You're right.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by your story, and what is going through my mind is how do you see it yourself? What was the thing in your youth that if you can recall to it now, that made you the person doing what you're doing now? Was that you didn't like authoritism, or didn't you like I don't know. I have my daughter, she is a minimalist and a tiny house, and she doesn't want to have anything. She doesn't even want to have kids. But she's very happy and lucky, and she travels the world, and she is now living Switzerland, and she doesn't care, not even if she has 2 socks with the same color, so to speak. But she's very intelligent. She had a high education, but it is her choice, and I think it was a choice she made when she was 14, that she wanted to live like this. How is that with you? Has there been a specific situation or that you can recall that made you to the person you are now in doing the work that you do now?
That's a difficult question for me. Nothing pops up immediately. There was always a camera, a good, solid Canon, like old school analog camera that was always present in my childhood. My parents would take slides. We had slideshows as a child, which I loved. And there was just something about the slide projector and the smell of burnt like dust or something. But I'm not sure. There's just little shards of memories that come to me, but nothing that I can string now together to a really good coherent answer. Maybe something will come to me in a bit, but I mean, one thing was, and this is kind of dangerous, but I had one of those mothers, my father too, both my parents, they thought everything I did was great, like, oh, what a great drawing, oh, you're so good. So that doesn't always go so well when you have that, but I do think for me it's a blessing, because it's like a basic foundation of I'm worthy, or if I want to make a film, it's going to be good, kind of thing. Confidence, I guess, that came all the way back from just support from my parents. And then when I wanted to take photographs, and it was expensive to buy film, you had to buy film, and you had to buy the fluid, the chemicals to process the film, and there was all kinds of stuff. And my father helped me, and he said, he gave me a piece of advice. He said, you should waste film. Like it sounded better in Swedish, but basically don't be stingy when it comes to buying film. Should take many pictures, even though it's expensive, even though you don't have the money. I will support you. That was one piece of advice. So I don't know, loving parents, I think, is part of the answer.
There are some interesting things, things that we have commented as well in the group, in some other discussions, that have to do with how we measure what matters to us. And we are forced by the society on certain types of metrics, like for countries GDP, or for us position, title in your card, and amount of money, or the car you have, or things like that. And you have taken slightly different choices when it comes to what you measure. Do you feel that that's something that can be shown? Because part of what I see with the model that I love, what you have taught us, what you have described, and the videos and the stories, and is that we are fighting against giants that are setting us towards a certain path. In your case, it's against algorithms, for example, or against the creation of people that wants us to not to think too deep in things, but and you go in a slightly different direction that makes more sense if we are very humanistic. But that is about choices. So how can we help, like, showing which choices make more sense to end, as you said before, to be on your last day and said, oh, I did a fantastic thing. I didn't have to do 40 films to be very happy. I did just 35 and it was enough. Things like that. That mindset of enough, not more.
Well, there was one word that you used, which I'd like to object to a little bit. You said we are forced. You used the word force. we're forced to comply with certain sets of rules. And of course, in a sense, I understand what you mean, but I want to loosen the grip of that word force, because are we really forced? Let's say we have parents that say you need to get a job, you need to do this, you have to become a doctor or something. Like I said before, I think most of us on this call have this refrigerator with food. There's safety systems. We can choose. Some of us are lucky enough that we can choose the direction of profession that we would prefer. We can have access to education. We can have access to libraries and knowledge. And we can, if we want to learn how to play the guitar, I bet everybody on this call could find a way to sign up to a course to learn to play the guitar if they wanted to. And I think, yes, there's things we are, quote, forced into, but they're just kind of suggestions, aren't they? They're just kind of suggestions that we don't really think about. And if we begin to dismount them a little bit or just loosen the grip a little bit, we can make different choices. And I think it has to do, there's a word called courage, which people use to describe something like superheroes, or like we have certain connotations with the word courage when we think about films or stories that we might have heard. But I think the word courage is much more useful in a very everyday sense. To have the courage to make different choices, and to have the courage to maybe not go with what's being presented to you by the counselor in high school that says you need to do this thing, or whatever that translates to in your now adult lives, where you go and you think you have to do certain things. Yeah, of course, I wouldn't want to make my choices and then have, you know, my child be hungry because of my choices. So yeah, there's that. But if I can make sure that there's nutritious food for my family, and still have the space to make other choices, I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities when you loosen that grip of have to, or we're forced to. Like, if you don't believe, you know, it's like borders. Of course, there's a border between Sweden and Denmark, of course. But at the same time, if you go in the water between there and you go in a little fishing boat, there's no border. It's not. And if you have a neighbor and there's an oak tree that's halfway on your neighbor's property and halfway on yours, you're technically, yeah, you own half of the, but the oak doesn't think so. The oak is just there. So there's so many things that are imposed upon us, and some of them we would be better off not take so seriously all the time.
Yeah. We have maybe one final question, but if I object a little bit also, Mattias, of course, we are blessed to live in countries like Sweden that offers that. I come myself from Brazil, and well, my family, I think we had more options, but I mean, many people in Brazil wouldn't have the refrigerators or even the options, right? So, but I understand what you mean. I think, especially in a country like Sweden, the options are so immense, right? To choose whatever you want to do. And so we have one final question, Andres.
Okay, thank you for giving me the opportunity to give the last question. I really like campfires. I believe we need more campfires to gather around. And Mattias, your movies are like campfires to 120,000 people around the world. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what happens when you release a movie? How do you what do you know about the campfire discussions that your films create?
I don't know enough about that, which is sad. Most of what happens after I release a film is something that I will never know, including blissfully the times when people say, "Oh, this sucks." So that's on the positive account. But sometimes I do get little notes or emails or things where people say what the film did. There was one festival in Vermont last year, which they had been in contact with me before and asked if they could screen some films, and I said, of course. So they wrote a very nice email with a nice account of all the discussions that were spurred from the films, and also they shared some pictures that they had. They were outdoors with under the stars with a big outdoor screen, and there were people from the next town over that were so excited and wanted to bring some of these films to the library in that town, and they were asking if that's would be possible, and I said of course. So I do get little notes of recognition. And of course, in the YouTube, there's the comments, which most of them are very kind and generous. Sometimes they say this sucks, so there's that. But yeah, I try when I release a film, I always invite. I have a meeting similar to the one we're having right now, where I invite. Typically, I would invite the person that the film is about, if it's one of those films. And we do I introduce the film, and then we watch the film, and it's all the at the moment it's the Patreon supporters that get invited to be live on the call. So usually 30 or 40 people, sometimes more, sometimes less. And so we have a conversation like this, and I record it, and then I release it on YouTube as well as an accompanying video for the film. Somebody who watches the film can then go and watch the Q&A and find out more. And I'm actually thinking now of expanding the idea of having a film not just be only a film. So I have a podcast also, which has been dormant for 3 years now, but I'm reawakening the podcast, and some of those episodes will be, so there'll be a film about a person, and only so much of the interviews I would have made with that person end up in the film. And then there will be a podcast, much longer form, going in much more depth about the topic. So those are some of the ways in which I and I always send each film to about 10, 15, sometimes 20 film festivals. And so it gets accepted sometimes to 20% or 30% of them. And so that's also another way that the film can live on. But then generally, I mean, I make about 4 films a year. So whenever I release a film, I'm generally really excited about the next one, because that's the one I'm working on. But I have to remember always to send it out into the world with a lot of love, and to find my own excitement again, because at that point I will have worked so many hours in the editing room and seen it so many times, so I'm kind of sick of it. But then it helps to release it in this way, where other people seeing it for the first time. And and we have a great community hall here where I live, and so I do local screenings there sometimes, and inviting the local community and Q&As and stuff like that.
That's great. Thanks so much.
Any other questions before we thank?
Not question, but a very nice comment. There's a word that we have used a lot lately in our discussions, which is agency, which has a lot to do with what you were saying about not being forced, but making decisions by yourself. So there's a lot that you have said about that. The other thing that I wanted to comment is that I also use a lot of stories to teach and to learn and to do things, because that's how we're built. That's how our brain works. That's how we have learned through years. So Campfire Stories, it's a fantastic way to drive the message. So I really like it. So thank you very much for your generosity sharing the time with us.
Yes, Mattias, I can only say we need to clone you. We need to clone you in all local communities, It's fantastic, very, very inspiring what you're doing, and the choices you made, and both the work you do and the life choice you made. Thanks so much.
And one final thing, just funny thing, when you said before that you were limited by Viking distance, I understood Viking with V, not with B. So Viking, they went even to America and to the whole of the Mediterranean. So not so much of a limitation, I would say.
Well, it's like me then, making films in Canada and the UK and stuff.
Yes.
Maybe I meant Viking distance.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much for having me.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.